Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in, much appreciated. Just heading over to the gym right now to get my workout in. Wanted to get today's video done, and gonna do it on the Bassmaster Classic and talk about a little bit if it's gone down the tubes, gone downhill, if it just doesn't have the same impact it did before. I'm gonna give you guys my opinion on that. I think you might find it a little interesting here. And real quick before we just get started, I want to give you guys a weekly update on the Block It Old School jig. Like I said, we had 2,500 in stock this past week, ready to go. And I think there's like 500 left or something out of that run. So if you guys are interested in getting any before they're out of stock for, a week or so, I'll include the Baitworks link in the description where you can order them. And getting into jig season, much appreciated that. Okay guys, let's talk a little bit about the Bassmaster Classic. And I'm gonna say right off the bat, Bassmaster Classic is not what it used to be back in the day. Absolutely, it's not. And I'm gonna go into the reasons for that. I've had a chance to qualify for 9 Bassmaster Classics. It was some of the greatest experience of my life fishing that particular tournament. A lot of the times I fished it. My last classic was my last year of fishing the Bass Top 150 circuit was in 2005, and I fished the 2004 Bassmaster Classic, the one Takahiro Mori one. That was my last classic, but I had a chance to fish 9 classics between the late 80s and the late 90s, so had a chance to really see it before it's in its modern day form. Right off the bat, guys, I'm going to tell you, in my opinion, the reason the Bassmaster Classic is not what it used to be. It simply does not hold sway that it used to within the industry, and that is simply because there's too many tournaments and too many tournament organizations. There's a lot of different ones that came up there. FLW, MLF, ever since FLW came along, excuse me, back in the mid 90s, late 90s actually, it took away a lot from what the Bassmaster Classic was, and that's because it basically spread the talent too thin. And here's the analogy I'm going to draw for you guys. Let's say, for example, everybody knows the Super Bowl is the greatest event in football. Let's say, for example, that there was say some dude was a billionaire and he wanted to start another league. So he lured a bunch of the NFL players to come over in this new league that they started out, and it segmented the sport. Basically, you had 75% of the stars got pulled over to a different league because of the lure of money, and then you had the remaining guys stay with the NFL. And as a result, the Super Bowl, even though it's still considered the Super Bowl, it simply didn't have the impact it did back prior to when the new organization pulled all those people across. That's exactly what has happened with the Bassmaster Classic. Bassmaster Classic, in my opinion, is the greatest sporting event there is in fishing. And the reason that it's sort of a tragedy in my mind is that the Bassmaster Classic was always seen as a stabilizing factor in the sport. It was like the foundation. It was the grounding. The sport revolved around the Bassmaster Classic. And I think that was a good thing. I think that was a good thing in so many different capacities. And what has happened over the past 20-25 years is that foundation and that stability has gradually got chipped away year by year by year. And while the Bassmaster Classic is still considered the marquee event in the sport, it simply does not have the same energy and the vibe that it did back in the heydays of the late 70s, 80s, and 90s, or mid 90s, basically up until FLW came out there. Guys, the first couple classics that I made, here's how it went down basically. They took the top 35 out of the standings, so it was cut and dried with that. And then in the tournaments, everybody fished out of identical boats. Bass provided the boats, so you couldn't bring your own boat. Everybody had the same equipment, the same boats, and they flew you into the tournaments. You were allowed to have 1 tackle box, 6 to 7 rod and reels. Everybody was on a real equal playing field. You got into the tournament, they flew you in there. You had a chauffeur all week long that drove you to the ramp, launched you, picked you up. Every night you had, coat and tie dinner, banquets. It was a big deal. I mean, they made a show out of it. And gradually that sort of went away. The whole, the whole pageantry of the Classic went away, you know, as time went on there. So in my opinion, you know, and here's the deal with it. It's like we have entered a phase where I don't think it's really ever going to come back. As long as you have organizations like MLF and other, you know, tournament organizations that have segmented, you know, the sport and took a big pie out of it and have their own championships, and they market their own anglers, and they market their own end of the year fish offs, that type of stuff, that simply takes away from the Classic quite a bit. And you know, you can call me old school or whatever like that, but I've been around the sport, and I've been an observer and a fan of it since the 1970s. And the heyday for me, you know, from what I can see on this entire thing, was from about 1985 to 1992. That was like the high point of professional fishing. That was when the Bassmasters Classic was the pinnacle of the sport. That's when everything revolved around it. That's when you had an energy and excitement that simply cannot be duplicated since then. So, you know, where does that leave us, you know, moving forward? You know, what's the situation look like? And I just think that, you know, until, you know, you still have one organization, until one organization emerges that is just so far ahead and above everything else, you're going to continue to have that segmentation. You're going to continue to have the Classic watered down, and it's just not going to be the way it was before. So, you know, I'd like to see it the way it was in the past. I know, you know, things change, that's part of life and that type of stuff, but a lot of times change is not for the best. And I have not seen what has taken place over the past 20 years to be the best in the sport. One of the things I'll say about FLW is FLW did some good and bad things both. I mean, it brought a lot of non-endemic companies into the sport, you know, from that standpoint, but it made and destroyed a lot of different careers, basically because how you were aligned at the time. I mean, if you were on the right side of the aisle, you know, you benefited from it, and if you weren't, you didn't on that. And as a result, after FLW went down the tubes, you know, MLF and Bassmaster were the two, you know, main things to pick up the pieces of the puzzle. And I don't even know where that stands right now. Like I said, I don't follow it as much as I used to. But from my own perception, from what I can see right now, it's like the two organizations have watered themselves down to the point of which neither one of them are seen as like the clear-cut, you know, championships to have. I mean, MLF's got, I think it's called the Red Crest, and then you got the Bassmasters Classic. You've got marquee anglers on both sides of there, and in my opinion, there's just not room for two, man. There's not. I mean, back, like I said, if you guys had followed the sport for years and years, the guys like myself that have been there and seen it, you know what I'm talking about. It's like the entire industry was so much better when there was only one kid on the block. It's the same deal, guys, with Major League Baseball, or the Professional Bowlers Tour, or the PGA, or the NFL. You don't see other sports organizations fighting to who's going to have the championship. You don't see two Super Bowls. You don't see two different World Series. You don't see two Masters events in golf. Bass fishing does, and it has harmed the sport. It has harmed the direction that the sport is going in as a result of that. And, you know, there's a lot of different reasons out there. I could go into the reasons. I definitely hurt a bunch of feelings if I gave you my opinion on that, but ultimately it is what it is, and it's not for the best. So I'd be curious to hear your guys' opinion on it. Shoot me some comments. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think that FLW and MLF, you know, splitting up bass and, you know, dividing up the sport's a good thing for the sport? Do you think it's a bad thing? I think it's a conversation worth having. So anyway, just wanted to put that video in light of the Bassmasters Classic starting next week, and hope you guys are having a good day. And please hit that subscribe button, man. Half you dudes out there that are watching these videos and learning about all these secret tips I'm throwing, you aren't even subscribed to the channel, man. So just hit that subscribe button. That'd be cool. So we'll talk later. See you.